Hi guys, tonight we step into a narrow medieval street as daylight fades and the cold begins to settle in, creeping through stone walls and into tired bones, and you might wonder how anyone without a home could possibly endure what is coming next. What happens when the fire is not yours, the door is closed, and the wind has no mercy? You're about to find out, so, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And while you are here, tell me your location and the local time where you are listening. Now, dim the lights. You pull your cloak tighter, though calling it a cloak feels generous at best. It is a patchwork of worn cloth as stiff with age and damp from earlier snow. The air smells faintly of wood smoke drifting from distant chimneys, but it does not reach you here, not really. The street beneath your feet is uneven, stones slick with frost that glimmers faintly in the fading light. You walk slowly, careful not to slip, because a fall in this cold could mean more than bruises. It could mean the difference between waking and not waking at all. Night is coming fast. You notice others already settling into their chosen corners. A figure huddles beneath a crooked stair, wrapped in layers that look no thicker than your own. Another crouches beside a wall, hands tucked deep into sleeves, rocking gently to keep blood moving. No one speaks loudly. Voices, when they come, are low and brief, as if sound itself might get too much of the fragile warmth each person is trying to hold on to. In many medieval towns, beggars were a common sight, especially during winter months when work disappeared and food grew scarce. Some had once been labourers, others injured soldiers, and some simply unlucky. Society expected charity, yet it rarely provided enough to guarantee survival. You pause near a narrow alley, feeling the wind funnel through it like an icy breath. It cuts straight through your clothing, sharp and immediate. Your fingers begin to sting, then dull, as sensation fades in small, dangerous increments. Cold does that. It does not always arrive with drama. Instead, it creeps, steals warmth quietly, and convinces you to stay still when movement is what you need most. You flex your hands, press them under your arms, and keep walking. There is a smell here. It is not just smoke. It is damp wool, unwashed bodies, and the faint sourness of refuse left too long in the street. Survival has a scent, and it lingers everywhere. You get used to it, or at least you stop noticing as much. A bell tolls in the distance, slow and steady, marking the hour. Church bells structured daily life in medieval towns, signalling prayer times and curfews. For you, it is simply a reminder that darkness is settling in, and with it, a deeper cold. Historians still debate how many people truly lived on the streets in medieval cities, as records often overlooked those without status or property. Some estimates suggest entire hidden populations, moving quietly along the edges of society, unseen until they could not be ignored. You pass a doorway already occupied. The man there glances up briefly, then lowers his gaze. There is no hostility, but no invitation either. Space is limited, warmth even more so. You keep moving. Your breath fogs in front of you. Each exhale a brief cloud that disappears almost instantly. You listen to the subtle sounds around you. Footsteps fading, a distant laugh from inside a tavern, the crackle of a fire you cannot reach. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks. Animals survive this too, often better than people, their fur and instincts giving them an edge. You envy that just a little. Then you shake the thought away, focusing instead on what you can control. Where will you rest? It is the question that shapes your evening. The right spot might shield you from wind, offer a trace of warmth, or at least keep you hidden from guards who might drive you away. The wrong spot could expose you fully, leaving you at the mercy of frost that settles like a silent weight. You find a shallow recess in a stone wall, barely deep enough to break the wind. It is not much, but it is something. You step into it, turning your back to the open street, curling slightly to conserve heat. Stillness settles around you. You shift your feet, trying to keep circulation going, and pull your worn layers tighter. The fabric scratches against your skin, rough and stiff, but it traps a thin layer of air close to your body. That air is precious. It is your barrier against the night. A nearby figure coughs. It is a dry, persistent sound, echoing softly against stone. Illness spreads easily in these conditions, where bodies are close and warmth is shared without choice. A simple cough can linger, deepen, and become something far more dangerous. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to focus. The cold presses in from all sides. You feel it in your toes, your fingers, the tip of your nose. It demands attention, constant and unrelenting. And yet, around you, people endure. They shift, breathe, wait, because they must. There is no grand solution waiting, no sudden rescue, just small decisions made carefully, repeated each night, where to stand, when to move, how to hold on to heat for just a little longer. You listen again. The bell has stopped. The street grows quieter. The world narrows, the space you occupy and the fragile warmth you guard. This is how it begins. You wake without realizing you ever slept. Your body stiff and your breath shallow, as if the night pressed pause rather than granting rest. The cold has settled deeper now, threading its way through every layer you wear, testing each seam and weakness with quiet patience. Your first instinct is to move, slowly, carefully. You flex your fingers inside your sleeves, rubbing them against your palms to coax sensation back. The fabric feels rough, almost brittle, as though it might crack if bent too sharply. It smells faintly of mildew and smoke, a scent that never quite leaves. Clothing is everything out here. Not fine clothing, of course, but whatever can be gathered, traded, or found. In medieval towns, fabric was valuable, often reused until it nearly fell apart. Beggars rarely owned a single proper garment, instead layering scraps of wool, linen, or even sacking to create a fragile shield against the cold. You shift your shoulders, feeling the uneven bulk of your layers. One sleeve is thicker than the other, stuffed with extra cloth torn from something long forgotten. Around your torso, strips of fabric are wrapped beneath your outer covering, tied in place with twine that scratches against your skin. It is not comfortable, but it traps air. That thin pocket of air between layers becomes your closest ally. Holding on to the faint warmth your body produces. Without it, the cold would press directly against your skin, draining heat faster than you could replace it. You tug at the edge of your garment, adjusting it to close a small gap near your neck. Even the smallest opening invites the wind inside, and once it enters, it lingers, stealing warmth in slow, deliberate drafts. A figure nearby shifts, the rustle of cloth loud in the stillness. You glance over and see someone pulling their knees close to their chest, wrapping their arms tightly around their legs. It is a common posture, one that conserves heat by reducing exposed surface area. Everyone learns these things, not from instruction but from necessity. There is a faint crunch as frost settles over the ground, a soft, almost delicate sound. It contrasts with the harsh reality of what it represents. Moisture in the air freezing onto every surface, including the fabric you rely on. Dampness is a quiet enemy. If your layers grow wet, whether from snow, sweat, or the breath trapped inside your coverings, they lose much of their insulating power. Some historians suggest that managing moisture was one of the greatest health challenges for those living outdoors in winter, though records rarely describe it in detail. You feel it now, a subtle chill where fabric clings too closely to your skin, a reminder that warmth is never guaranteed. You shift again, creating small pockets of space, trying to restore that insulating layer. Your feet ache, the sensation comes in waves, sharp at first, then fading into a dull numbness that is somehow more alarming. You stamp lightly, careful not to draw attention, just enough to encourage blood flow. The ground beneath you is unforgiving, leaching heat with every moment you remain still. Nearby, someone mutters softly, perhaps a prayer or simply a habit formed over many nights like this. Religion played a significant role in medieval life, and even those with nothing often clung to belief as a source of comfort. Whether it provided warmth is another question entirely. Historians still argue whether spiritual reassurance had measurable effects on survival, or if it simply eased the mind while the body endured. You pull your arms tighter across your chest. The wind shifts. It slips around the edge of your shelter, finding new angles, probing for weaknesses. You turn slightly, adjusting your position to block it, your back pressing more firmly against the cold stone behind you. The surface is hard and unyielding, but it breaks the force of the air, and that matters. Every small advantage counts. A scrap of fur, if you can find it, becomes priceless. Even a worn piece, taken from an old garment or discarded by someone wealthier, can add a layer of insulation that makes the difference between shivering and freezing. There are stories of beggars trading nearly anything for such items, though how often those trades succeeded is uncertain. You imagine the softness of fur for a moment, then let it go. Instead, you focus on what you have, layers upon layers. Imperfect but present. You shift your weight again, careful not to compress the fabric too much, because flattened layers lose their ability to trap air. It is a delicate balance. Too loose, and cold air slips through. Too tight, and warmth escapes just as quickly. A distant door creaks open, followed by a brief spill of light onto the street. Voices drift out, warm and lively, carrying the scent of cooked food. For a moment, the contrast is almost unbearable. Then the door closes. Darkness returns. You exhale slowly, watching the faint cloud form and vanish. Your breath feels warmer than the air around you. A small reassurance that your body is still fighting, still producing heat. You must help it. You shift your feet again, roll your shoulders, keep your muscles engaged just enough to maintain circulation. Stillness invites the cold to settle deeper, to claim more ground. Movement resists it. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. You listen to the quiet rhythm of the street, the occasional cough, the rustle of fabric, the distant echo of footsteps fading into nothing. Each sound reminds you that you are not alone, even if no one speaks. Survival here is shared, but it's solitary. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to gather yourself, to measure what remains of your strength, your warmth, your resolve. The night is far from over, and your layers, thin and fragile as they are, will have to carry you through. You begin to understand that where you rest matters almost as much as what you wear. The difference between one doorway and another can feel small at first glance, yet through the long hours of night, that difference grows into something decisive. You step carefully out of your shallow shelter, testing the air again. The cold has sharpened, tightening its grip on every exposed surface. Your breath comes quicker now, not from exertion, but from the quiet urgency to find a better place before your warmth slips further away. Location is everything. In medieval towns, architecture was not designed with comfort for the poor in mind, yet it offered accidental refuges, narrow alleys, recessed doorways, overhanging upper floors, all created pockets where wind slowed and heat lingered just a little longer. You scan the street. Your eyes move over familiar shapes, noting which spaces are already taken and which might still offer a chance. A wide doorway ahead looks promising, its heavy wooden door set back deep within a stone frame. The recess creates a small hollow, shielded on three sides. You approach, cautious. Someone is already there. A woman sits against the wall, her layers gathered tightly around her, her head bowed as if asleep. You pause at the edge of the space, uncertain, Sharing might mean warmth, but it also means risk, of illness, of conflict, of being pushed away in the middle of the night. She does not look up. You move on. The wind curls around the corner of the street, carrying with it the faint scent of ash and something less pleasant beneath it. Waste often collected in these narrow passages, and while the smell is unpleasant, it sometimes signals a hidden advantage. Less traffic. Fewer disturbances. You turn into a side alley, narrower than the street you left behind. The walls rise close on either side, creating a corridor that blocks much of the wind. It is darker here, the fading light barely reaching the ground. This could work. You step deeper inside, feeling the air grow slightly less aggressive against your fez. It is still cold, of course, but the sharp edge has softened. You run your hand along the stone wall, rough and damp, the texture grounding you in the moment. A small alcove appears ahead. It's barely more than an indentation, perhaps once used for storage or as a place to set goods. Now it offers just enough space for a person to stand or crouch. You test it, stepping inside and turning your back to the open alley. The wind lessens. Not gone, but reduced. You exhale slowly, feeling a subtle shift in your body as it recognizes the slight improvement. Your shoulders drop a fraction, tension easing just enough to notice. This is better. In some medieval cities, certain corners became known among the poor as reliable places to endure the night. These informal networks of knowledge passed quietly from person to person, though historians are not always certain how organized such systems truly were. You imagine someone pointing this place out to you earlier, a whispered suggestion shared over a scrap of bread. Whether that happened or not, you have found it now. A drip echoes nearby. Water seeps in from somewhere above, freezing as it reaches the ground, forming a thin, uneven patch of ice. You step carefully around it, aware that slipping here would be worse than in the open street. There would be no easy way to recover. You settle in. Your body curls slightly, instinctively conserving heat. You tuck your chin down, pulling your layers close, sealing in what warmth you can. The wall behind you is cold, but it is solid, a barrier that blocks one direction of the creeping air. You listen. The alley carries sound differently. Footsteps from the main street arrive muted, softened by distance and stone. A cart rattles somewhere far away, its wheels grinding over frozen ground. Voices drift in and out, indistinct, as if the world beyond has been wrapped in cloth. Closer, you hear breathing. Someone else is nearby. You shift your gaze and notice a figure deeper in the shadows, almost invisible at first. They are tucked into another recess, mirroring your own position. For a moment, your eyes meet. Then both of you look away. No words are needed. This silent agreement to share space without intrusion becomes part of survival. You exist side by side, each guarding your own small pocket of warmth, each aware that the other is doing the same. A faint scratching sound draws your attention. A small animal, perhaps a rat, moves along the edge of the wall, searching for scraps. It pauses, sniffing the air, then disappears into a crack in the stone. Even here, life persists, adapting in ways that seem almost effortless. You envy that simplicity, then you return your focus to the present. Your feet press against the ground, and you become acutely aware of the cold rising from below. Stone holds the chill of the day and deepens it through the night, pulling heat from your body with quiet determination. You shift your stance, trying to reduce contact, but there's only so much you can do. Beggars gathered straw or debris to create a barrier, though finding such materials in winter was not always possible. Historians still debate how often these small insulating tricks were used, as written records rarely capture the daily improvisations of those living on the margins. You adjust again. Your layers rustle softly, the sound oddly comforting in the stillness. Each movement is deliberate, conserving energy while maintaining circulation. You cannot afford to grow too still. The cold would welcome that. Time stretches. Minutes feel longer, each one marked not by clocks, but by the slow changes in your body, the ache in your hands, the numbness in your toes, the subtle shifts in your breathing. You remain aware. That awareness is your defense, your way of noticing when something changes, when the cold deepens, when your body begins to falter. It keeps you alert, even as exhaustion presses at the edges of your mind. A distant bell rings again. Its sound reaches you faintly, filtered through layers of stone and air. Another hour has passed, though it feels both shorter and longer than it should. You lean your head back against the wall for a moment. The surface is unforgiving, yet it anchors you, reminding you that you are still here, still enduring around you. The alley holds its quiet, its shadows deep and unmoving. This small corner, hidden from the worst of the wind, becomes your world. For now, it is enough. You begin to notice how the cold changes when others draw near, how the air itself seems to soften, if only slightly. When bodies gather in close proximity, it is not warmth in any comforting sense, but it is less harsh, less biting, and that difference matters more than you might expect. You shift within your narrow alcove, aware of the figure deeper in the shadows. They have not moved much, yet you can sense their presence, a quiet rhythm of breathing that fills the small space between you. Heat travels, not far, not easily, but enough. In desperate conditions, people often move closer together, sharing what little warmth their bodies could produce. It was not always a choice made lightly. Proximity brought risks, illness, theft, discomfort, yet the alternative, facing the cold entirely alone, could be worse. You hesitate. Then, slowly, you edge a little closer to the center of the alcove, reducing the space between you and the other figure, not enough to touch, just enough to feel a faint change in the air, a subtle shift that suggests shared heat. They do not pull away. That is all the permission you need. The air here feels different now, thicker somehow, carrying the faint scent of worn fabric and human presence. It is not pleasant, but it is alive. Your shoulders relax slightly as you settle into this new arrangement. A small adjustment, a quiet improvement. You draw your knees closer to your chest, wrapping your arms around them, creating a tighter shape. This posture reduces the surface exposed to the cold, allowing your body to conserve heat more effectively. It is instinctive. You watch as the other figure mirrors your movement, curling inward, their layers shifting with a soft rustle. For a moment, there is a strange sense of coordination, two people adapting in parallel without a single word exchanged. Outside the alcove, the wind continues its restless movement, slipping through the alley with a low, constant whisper. Here, it feels distant, muted by stone and bodies. You listen. The sounds of the town have quieted further. The occasional footstep passes by so quicker now, as those with homes hurry indoors. A door slams somewhere, the sound sharp and brief, followed by silence. You remain. This is where you must be, in some accounts. Groups of beggars form loose clusters during the coldest nights, gathering in sheltered areas to share warmth. Whether these gatherings were cooperative or simply tolerated is not always clear, and historians continue to debate the nature of these interactions. You feel both sides of it now. The benefit, the unease. Your arm brushes lightly against the edge of the other person's garment. The contact is brief, almost accidental, yet it sends a small wave of warmth through the fabric. You do not pull away immediately. Neither do they. The boundary shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to matter. You lean slightly, allowing your shoulder to rest closer to theirs, careful not to press too heavily. It is a delicate balance, sharing heat without intruding. You can feel it now. A faint warmth, subtle but real, spreading where your bodies are closest. It does not erase the cold, but it dulls its edge, giving you a small advantage against the night. A quiet trade. Comfort for closeness. You become aware of your own breathing, slow and steady, and the matching rhythm beside you. The two patterns begin to align, creating a shared cadence that fills the small space. It is oddly calming. Even here, even now, a distant laugh drifts from the direction of a tavern, muffled by distance and stone. For a moment, it feels like a sound from another world, one where warmth is abundant and the night is something to enjoy rather than endure. Then it fades. You return your focus inward. Your hands are still cold, though less painfully so than before. You tuck them deeper beneath your arms, pressing them against your sides where heat is strongest. The fabric shifts again, trapping that warmth more effectively. Every adjustment matters. The person beside you coughs softly, the sound contained. Almost restrained, it lingers in the air, a reminder of the risks that come with this closeness. Illness spreads easily in such conditions, passing quietly from one body to another. You hold your breath for a moment, then release it. There is no perfect choice here, only better or worse options, measured in degrees of discomfort and danger. Tonight, shared warmth edges slightly ahead. Historians still argue whether communal huddling significantly improves survival rates, or if its benefits were offset by the spread of disease. The truth, as with many things from this time, remains uncertain. You shift again, careful to maintain the fragile equilibrium you have found. Too much movement could disrupt it, letting cold air slip back in. Too little, and your body might grow too still, inviting the chill to settle deeper. It is a constant negotiation between motion and rest, between distance and closeness. The stone wall at your back feels less oppressive now, its cold presence softened by the shared heat in front of you. You lean into it slightly, using it as support while keeping your body angled toward the warmth beside you. Your eyes grow heavy, not with comfort, but with exhaustion. Sleep here is not cheap or restful. It comes in brief moments, interrupted by the need to move, to adjust, to remain aware. Still, even a fragment of rest can help, allowing your body to conserve energy for the hours ahead. You let your head tilt forward, just slightly. The world narrows again, your focus shrinking to the immediate sensations of breath, fabric, and the faint warmth shared between you and the stranger at your side. Outside, the night continues its slow passage. Inside this small alcove you endure together, bound not by choice but by necessity, each offering and receiving the smallest measure of survival. For now, it is enough. You begin to crave something more than shared warmth, something active, something that pushes back against the cold rather than merely enduring it. Your eyes drift toward the alley's entrance, where faint traces of smoke still linger in the air. Fire! Even the smallest flame could change everything. You hesitate before moving, aware that leaving your sheltered position carries risk. The cold feels sharper beyond the alcove, and the fragile balance you have built here might be lost. Yet the thought of even a flicker of heat draws you forward. Slowly, you step out. The wind greets you immediately, slipping through your layers with renewed determination. You tighten your posture, keeping your movements controlled, conserving energy as you make your way toward the source of that faint scent. Somewhere nearby, someone has tried, in medieval towns, open fires were tightly controlled, especially within crowded streets where flames could spread quickly. For those without homes, this meant any attempt at creating fire had to be small, hidden, and often improvised from whatever scraps could be found. You follow the smell. It leads you to a corner where the alley widens slightly, forming a shallow pocket between two walls. There, crouched low to the ground, a pair of figures tend to something barely visible. A weak glow. You approach carefully, stopping just short of the space. The fire is little more than a cluster of embers, fed by fragments of wood, bits of cloth, and what looks like dried refuse. It smoulders rather than burns, producing more smoke than heat. Still, it is something. The air here carries a stronger scent now, acrid and heavy, tinging your nose as you inhale. It is not pleasant. but beneath it lies a thin thread of warmth rising gently from the glowing centre. You edge closer. The figures glance up briefly, their eyes reflecting the faint light. There is a moment of tension, a silent question of whether you'll be allowed to share this fragile resource. Then they look back down. Permission granted, or at least not denied. You lower yourself carefully, positioning your hands near the embers, close enough to feel the heat but far enough to avoid disturbing the delicate arrangement. The warmth is faint, almost disappointing at first, but as you hold your hands there, it grows more noticeable. A slow return of feeling. Your fingers tingle, the numbness giving way to a dull ache as sensation creeps back in. It is uncomfortable, yet reassuring, a sign that warmth is reaching places the cold had claimed. Small fires like this were rarely efficient. Without proper fuel or structure, they burned unevenly, often dying out quickly. Historians note that beggars and the poor relied on whatever combustible material they could find, including scraps that produce thick smoke and little sustained heat. You see that now. The embers flicker weakly, their glow pulsing as one of the figures nudges them gently with a stick. A piece of fabric is added, catching briefly before collapsing into ash, releasing a fresh wave of smoke that curls upward and dissipates into the night. You cough softly. The smoke clings to your throat, dry and persistent. Yet you remain. The trade is clear. A little warmth in exchange for discomfort. You extend your hands again. This time, you feel it more clearly. A gentle heat against your skin, enough to ease the stiffness in your fingers. You turn your palms, then the backs of your hands, making the most of every moment. Around you, the alley holds its quiet, broken only by the soft crackle of embers and the occasional shift of those gathered near. No one speaks. Words would only draw attention, and attention could bring trouble. Better to remain unseen. In some towns, lighting unauthorized fires could lead to punishment, especially if it posed a risk to nearby buildings. Yet enforcement varied, and in the darkest corners, small acts of defiance often went unnoticed. Or ignored. You glance toward the alley's entrance, half expecting a figure to appear, a guard or passerby who might scatter this fragile gathering. Nothing comes. The night remains still, offering a brief window of safety. You lean in slightly, careful not to crowd the others. The warmth touches your face now, faint but welcome. It softens the sharp edge of the air, easing the tension in your jaw, your shoulders. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine what a true fire might feel like. Steady and strong, filling a room with heat. Then you return to reality. This is what you have. The embers shift again, their glow dimming slightly as the limited fuel is consumed. One of the figures searches nearby, gathering small fragments from the ground, anything that might burn, a splinter of wood, a scrap of straw. Each addition buys a little more time, a little more heat. Historians still debate how common such makeshift fires were among the homeless population, as written records tend to focus on larger, more visible events. The small hidden acts of survival often go unrecorded, existing only in fragments of evidence and imagination. You feel the truth of it here. This quiet effort, this shared resource. You draw your hands back for a moment, letting them rest against your chest to hold on to the warmth you have gained. The heat fades quickly, but not entirely. It lingers just enough to make a difference. You repeat the motion, hands out, hands in, a simple rhythm. The others follow similar patterns, each taking care not to disrupt the fragile balance. There is an unspoken understanding, a quiet cooperation born of necessity. No one owns the fire. Everyone depends on it. The smoke thickens briefly, then thins again as the embers settle. The glow is weaker now, its light barely illuminating the faces around it. You know it will not last much longer. Nothing here does. You take one last moment, extending your hands as close as you dare, absorbing what little heat remains. The sensation is fleeting, but it renews you just enough to continue. You withdraw slowly. The cold returns, immediate and familiar, but it feels slightly less overwhelming than before. The small fire has given you a brief advantage, a narrow margin that might carry you through the next stretch of night. You step back into the alley's shadows. Behind you, the embers fade. Ahead, the cold waits patiently, and you move forward to meet it. You drift back toward the wider street, carrying with you the fading memory of warmth from the embers. It lingers in your hands for a moment, then slips away, leaving behind only the familiar chill. Still, that brief heat has sharpened your thoughts. You begin to consider another possibility. Stone walls, thick, ancient, and unmoving. They hold more than just the cold. In certain places, they hold a different kind of shelter, one that does not rely on scraps or chance encounters. You turn your gaze toward the silhouette of a nearby church, its outline rising above the clustered roofs like something steady and watchful. Churches offered more than prayer, at least sometimes. In medieval towns, religious institutions were expected to provide charity, though the extent of that care varied widely. Some churches allowed the poor to gather inside during harsh weather, while others limited access, balancing compassion with order. You approach slowly. The heavy wooden doors are closed, their surface dark and worn from years of use. A faint line of light shows at the base, thin but unmistakable. Inside, there is warmth, even if only slightly more than outside. You pause at the steps. The stone beneath your feet feels colder here, exposed to the open air. Yet the walls on either side block some of the wind. You're not alone. A few figures linger nearby, shifting from foot to foot, their eyes fixed on the door as if waiting for it to open on its own. Hope gathers here, quiet and restrained. One of them steps forward, pressing a hand lightly against the wood, testing. It does not move. They withdraw, returning to their place, their shoulders sinking slightly. You step closer. The scent here is different, less refuse, more wax and faint incense drifting through the narrow gap below the door. It carries a sense of stillness, of space untouched by the constant movement of the streets. You knock, softly at first, then again a little firmer. The sound echoes dully, absorbed by the thick wood. For a moment, nothing happens. The night holds its breath, and you feel the weight of uncertainty settle in your chest. Then, from within, a faint movement, a shuffle of feet. The door creaks open just a fraction, enough for a sliver of warm air to escape. It brushes against your face, startling in its gentleness. A figure stands inside, partially obscured by shadow, their expression difficult to read. They look at you, at your layers, your posture, the way you hold yourself against the cold. There is a pause. Then the door opens slightly wider. Not fully, never fully, but enough. You step inside. The change is immediate. The air feels softer, less aggressive, carrying a faint warmth that seeps into your skin. It is not comfortable, not truly, but compared to the street, it feels almost luxurious. The space is dim, lit by a few candles set along the walls. Their flames flicker gently, casting long shadows that stretch across the stone floor. The smell of wax and old wood fills your senses, replacing the harsher scents outside. You move quietly. Others are already here, scattered along the edges of the space, sitting or crouching against the walls. No one speaks loudly. The silence is different from the street, deeper, more deliberate, respectful, or perhaps simply tired. You find a place near a column, its stone surface cool but not biting. You lean against it, allowing your body to relax just slightly. The absence of wind alone feels like a gift. Your fingers begin to thaw slowly, painfully. The return of warmth brings a dull ache, a reminder of how far the cold had reached. You flex your hands, watching the stiffness ease bit by bit. In some regions, churches maintain designated areas for the poor, offering limited shelter during extreme conditions, yet historians still debate how consistently these practices were applied, as records often highlight ideals rather than everyday realities. You feel that uncertainty now. This door opened. Another might not. Across the room, a figure shifts, pulling their layers tighter, their eyes half closed. Someone else murmurs softly, perhaps in prayer, perhaps simply speaking to themselves. The sound blends with the faint crackle of candle flames. You listen. The world outside feels distant, muted by thick walls and heavy doors. The chaos of the street, the relentless push of the wind, all of it fades into the background. Here, there is a pause. Not safety, but a pause. You lower yourself to the floor, careful and deliberate, your movements slow to conserve energy. The stone beneath you is still cold, yet without the wind, it does not drain your heat as quickly. You adjust your layers again, always adjusting. The habit never leaves you. Calmi. A soft draft moves through the space as the door opens briefly behind you, admitting another figure. A rush of colder air follows, then disappears as the door closes once more. Each opening matters. Each closing restores the fragile balance. You glance toward the entrance, noting how the others react. Subtle shifts, small adjustments, as if everyone is attuned to these changes without needing to speak. It is a shared awareness, a quiet understanding of how delicate this refuge is. Historians still argue whether such spaces significantly improve survival rates, or if they merely delayed the inevitable for those already weakened. The truth, like so much from this time, remains uncertain. You lean your head back against the column. The stone supports you, steady and unyielding. Your eyes grow heavy again, this time with a hint of something softer than before. Not comfort, but relief. A brief easing of the constant vigilance required outside. You let your breathing slow, matching the quiet rhythm of the space around you. The candlelight flickers gently over us, casting patterns that shift and settle, like the night itself breathing. For a moment, you allow yourself to rest. Not fully. Never fully, but enough to gather strength. Because you know this will not last forever. Soon you will have to return to the cold. But not yet. You do not stay inside the church as long as you would like. No one does. The quiet warmth is shared carefully, rationed in a way that is never spoken aloud but always understood. After a time, a subtle shift begins, a look from the figure near the door, a gentle motion that signals it is time to move on. You rise slowly, reluctantly. The air outside greets you again, colder now, as if it has been waiting for your return. The brief shelter lingers in your body, but already it begins to fade, slipping away with each breath you take in the open street. You step down from the church and pause. The night feels deeper, quieter, yet somewhere ahead there is movement, a low hum of voices, the faint clatter of cups, the occasional burst of laughter. You turn toward it almost instinctively. A tavern. Its presence announces itself not just through sound, but through scent. Warm food, spilled ale, wood smoke that rises thick and steady into the air. It draws you closer, even as you know the warmth inside is not meant for you. Still, the threshold matters. You approach the building, careful not to step too close too quickly. The doorway is open, light spilling out onto the street in a golden strip that cuts through the darkness. Figures move inside, shadows dancing against the walls. You stop just beyond the light. Here, the air feels different. Warmer. Not by much, but enough to notice. Heat escapes with every opening of the door, carrying with it the scent of roasted meat and fresh bread. It wraps around you briefly, then thins as it drifts into the night. You breathe it in, slowly, deliberately. In medieval towns, taverns served as social centres, places where warmth and food were abundant, at least for those who could pay. Beggars often lingered nearby, hoping for scraps or the rare kindness of a patron willing to share. You wait. A group inside shifts toward the door, laughter rising as someone pushes it wider. The rush of warm air is immediate, brushing against your face, your hands, seeping through your layers in a way that feels almost startling. For a moment, it feels like enough. Then the door swings back, the warmth retreats. You step a little closer, not into the light, not fully, just near enough to catch what escapes. You are not alone. Another figure stands a short distance away, their posture mirroring your own, angled toward the doorway, waiting for the next opening. No words are exchanged. They are not needed. A man stumbles out and his movements loose, his voice loud. He barely notices you as he steps past, the heat following him for a brief second before vanishing. You catch that warmth, hold on to it as long as you can. Then it is gone. You shift your weight, stamping lightly to keep your feet from growing too still. The ground here is less icy, so worn by constant movement, yet it still drains your heat with quiet persistence. A scrap lands near the doorway, a piece of bread, half eaten, dropped without care. You watch it for a moment, then step forward quickly, retrieving it before anyone else can. It is cold and slightly damp, but it is food. You hold it close, not eating it or savouring the fact that it exists. Hunger and cold often work together, each making the other harder to bear. A small amount of food could provide a brief surge of energy, helping your body generate more heat. It was never enough, but it helped. You take a bite, slowly. The bread is dense, its texture rough against your teeth, but it fills your mouth with a taste that is almost comforting. You chew carefully, stretching the moment, letting it last as long as possible. A door opens again. You turn your face toward it, closing your eyes for a brief second as the warmth touches you. It is a strange ritual, this silent exchange between inside and outside, between those who have and those who wait. Some patrons notice, most do not. A woman steps out briefly, her gaze flicking toward you. There is a pause, a moment where something passes across her expression, then she reaches back inside, retrieving a small object, and places it near the edge of the doorway. A scrap of cloth. You move forward, picking it up carefully. It is worn, but thicker than some of your layers, its fibres still holding a hint of softness. You nod slightly, though she's already turned away. Kindness, when it appears, is often brief, unexpected. Historians still argue how common such acts were, whether charity at tavern doors was frequent or rare. Records mention generosity, yet they also reveal indifference, leaving the true balance uncertain. You tuck the cloth into your layers, adjusting it to cover a gap near your side. The difference is immediate, small but noticeable, as it blocks a thin stream of cold air that had been slipping through. Every piece matters. You remain near the doorway, careful not to overstep, aware that your presence is tolerated only as long as it does not intrude. The warmth continues to come and go, each opening of the door offering a brief reprieve. You take another bite of bread, then another. The food settles in your stomach, bringing a faint sense of strength, a subtle easing of the constant edge of hunger. It does not last long, but it is enough to carry you a little further. Around you, the night continues its slow passage. The sounds from inside the tavern rise and fall, a distant echo of a life that feels just out of reach. You listen, not with longing exactly, but with awareness, understanding the contrast without dwelling on it. You focus on what you can take from this place, the heat that escapes, the scraps that fall, the occasional gesture that reminds you that not everyone looks away. Then, as the door closes once more, you step back. The warmth fades again, and you return to the cold, carrying with you what little you have gained. You leave the tavern's glow behind, the memory of warmth fading faster than you would like. The street ahead stretches into deeper shadow. Quieter now, yet not entirely still, there is another kind of presence here. One that has little to do with cold and everything to do with caution. You slow your steps, listening more carefully. The night carries different sounds now. Sharper, more deliberate, a footstep that lingers too long, a voice that drops to a whisper as you pass. The cold is not the only thing you must endure. Danger moves quietly. You keep to the edges of the street, where shadows gather and movement is less noticeable. Your posture shifts, shoulders slightly hunched, gaze lowered just enough to avoid drawing attention while still watching what matters. It is a careful balance. In medieval towns, the night often belonged to those who had nowhere else to go, but also to those who took advantage of that fact. Thieves, desperate souls, and sometimes even guards enforcing strict curfews all shared the same darkened spaces. You feel it in the air, a tension that was not as present earlier. A pair of figures stands across the street, partially hidden in a recessed doorway. They speak in low tones, their faces obscured by shadow. As you pass, their conversation stops. You do not look directly at them. Better not to invite notice. Your steps remain steady, measured, as if you have somewhere specific to be. It is a small performance, one that suggests purpose, even if none truly exists. Sometimes appearing certain is enough to avoid becoming a target. A faint clink echoes nearby, metal against metal. You glance briefly and catch sight of a guard moving along the far end of the street, a lantern swinging gently from his hand. The light casts shifting patterns across the ground, illuminating patches of frost and the occasional discarded object. You turn away. Guards were tasked with maintaining order, yet their treatment of beggars varied widely. Some offered tolerance. Others enforced strict rules that pushed the poor out of certain areas, regardless of the weather. Historians still argue how consistently these policies were applied, as local customs often shaped the reality more than written laws. You step into a narrower passage, letting the darkness close around you again. The lantern light fades behind you, replaced by the soft, ambient glow of the night sky reflecting off pale stone. Your breath steadies, but your awareness remains sharp. A sudden movement to your left makes you pause. A figure emerges from a shadowed corner, their pace quick, their eyes scanning the ground. They do not look at you, but their proximity is enough to raise your guard. You shift slightly, creating some space. They pass without incident. Still, your heart beats a little faster. The cold presses in, yet now it competes with something else. Quiet alertness that keeps you from settling too deeply into stillness. You cannot afford to relax completely, not here. Not now. A distant shout breaks the silence, brief and indistinct. It fades quickly, leaving behind a lingering uncertainty, and you listen for more, but nothing follows. The night resumes its quiet rhythm. You find another doorway, shallower than the last, but positioned in a way that offers a clear view of the street. You step into it, turning your body slightly so you can watch without being fully exposed. Position matters, not just for warmth, but for awareness. From here, you can see movement before it reaches you, giving you time to react, to shift, to leave if necessary. It is not perfect, but it is safer than being caught unawares. You settle in, your layers rustle softly as you adjust them once more, sealing in what warmth you can. The new piece of cloth from the tavern helps, blocking a thin line of cold along your side. A small improvement, but you feel it. Nearby, a faint whisper of voices drifts through the air, then fades. You cannot make out the words, only the tone, low and cautious. It reminds you that others are still moving, still navigating this shared space of cold and uncertainty. You are part of it, a quiet network of survival. Your eyes scan the street again, noting the subtle changes, a door that opens briefly, then closes, a shadow that shifts and disappears, the occasional flicker of light from a distant window. Each detail matters. Each one adds to your understanding of the night. Your feet ache again, the earlier warmth long gone. You shift your weight, pressing one foot, then the other, keeping circulation moving. The ground remains a constant drain, pulling heat away with every moment you stand. You resist it, through motion, through awareness, through the simple act of enduring. A dog passes by, its body low to the ground, its breath visible in the cold air. It pauses briefly, sniffing near the edge of the street, then moves on, disappearing into the shadows as quietly as it came. Even it stays alert. The bell does not ring this time, yet you sense the passage of hours in the deepening quiet, in the way the cold settles more heavily around you. The night is reaching its deepest point, when warmth feels most distant. You remain, still watching, still listening. The doorway behind you offers little comfort, but it gives you something else, a vantage point, a sense of control in a world where control is rare. You draw your layers tighter, your breath slows, and you wait for the night to pass, knowing that survival is not just about warmth, but about staying aware long enough to see the morning. You begin to notice a different kind of movement in the night, quieter than tavern doors and softer than footsteps on frost. It comes with intention, with purpose shaped not by survival alone, but by duty. Charity moves slowly. You shift within your doorway, eyes adjusting to the dim light as a small group approaches from the far end of the street, their paces measured, their posture upright despite the cold. One carries a lantern, its glow steady, while another holds something bundled in their arms. You watch closely. They are not like the others who pass. Their steps are deliberate, stopping at certain points along the street, pausing near figures huddled in corners or pressed into recesses. At each stop, there is a brief exchange, quiet words, a gesture, and then they move on. You understand quickly they are offering something. In medieval towns, acts of charity were often tied to religious obligation. Giving to the poor was seen as a path to spiritual merit, a way to demonstrate piety and compassion. Yet the extent and consistency of such efforts varied greatly from place to place. You remain still, not wanting to draw attention too soon. The group draws nearer, the lantern light growing brighter, casting long shadows that stretch across the uneven ground. You can see more clearly now. The bundle carried by one of them contains small items, cloth, perhaps bread. Hope flickers. Carefully, one of them stops a short distance from you, kneeling beside a figure you had not noticed before. Someone curled tightly against the base of a wall. A soft voice murmurs, followed by the sound of fabric being unfolded. A blanket, thin, worn but real. The figure stirs as is placed over them, their movements slow, almost uncertain, as if they cannot quite believe it. The one who kneels lingers for a moment, adjusting the cloth, ensuring it covers as much as possible. Then they rise, and move on. You feel something shift inside you. Not warmth, not yet, but the possibility of it. You step slightly forward, just enough to be seen without appearing to demand. The lantern light reaches you now, illuminating your worn layers, your posture, the way you hold yourself against the cold. One of them meets your gaze. There is a pause, a moment where you are assessed, not harshly, but carefully, as if weighing need against limited resources. Then they step closer, their movements calm and unhurried. They offer you something small, a piece of bread. You accept it with both hands, your fingers brushing against theirs briefly. Their skin feels warmer, not by much, but enough to remind you of what sustained warmth might feel like. Keep moving if you can, they say softly. The words are simple, but they carry weight. You nod. There is no need for more. They move on, their lantern light drifting away, stopping again further down the street, repeating the same quiet ritual. You watch them for a moment, the glow fading into the distance, leaving you once again in shadow. You look down at the bread. It is smaller than the last piece you found, but it is fresh, still soft beneath your fingers. The smell rises faintly, warm and comforting, cutting through the harsher scents of the street. You take a bite. Slowly, the taste is richer, the texture gentler. It fills your mouth with something close to satisfaction, a brief easing of the constant hunger that gnaws at you. Food brings warmth. Not directly, not like fire, but through the energy it provides. The quiet strength it gives your body to continue producing heat. It is a slower kind of defense, but no less important. You chew carefully. Each moment. Historians still argue how widespread organised charity truly was in medieval cities, as records often highlight ideals rather than everyday practice. Some suggest that such acts were sporadic, dependent on individual generosity rather than consistent systems. You feel that uncertainty now. Tonight someone came. Tomorrow they might not. You finish the bread, brushing the crumbs from your hands, unwilling to waste even the smallest piece. Your fingers linger for a moment, remembering the softness, the warmth it carried. Then you tuck your hands back into your layers. The cold presses in again, filling the space left by the brief comfort, yet something has changed. Your body feels slightly stronger, your movements a touch steadier. It is not much, but it matters. You shift your position within the doorway, adjusting your stance to face the street once more. The habit of awareness returns, your eyes scanning, your ears listening for any change. The night continues, unbroken, yet within it, there are moments like this. Small acts that ripple outward, offering just enough to carry you forward. A piece of bread, a thin blanket, a quiet word. They do not solve everything. They do not erase the cold, but they'd still remind you that survival is not always a solitary effort, even if it often feels that way. You take a slow breath, watching it fade into the air. The lantern light is gone now. The street returns to its dim stillness. And you remain, holding on to what you have been given, preparing to endure the hours that still lie ahead. You begin to feel the quiet pull of hunger again, even after the bread has settled in your stomach. It never truly leaves. It waits, patient and steady, returning as soon as the brief comfort fades. Cold sharpens it, or perhaps hunger sharpens the cold. It becomes difficult to tell which one leads and which one follows. Together, they press against you, constant companions through the long hours of night. You shift your weight in the doorway, your body responding more slowly now, as if each movement requires a little more effort than before. The energy from the bread lingers, but it is thin, stretched across too many needs. You feel it in your hands, in your legs, a quiet heaviness. In medieval life, access to food was uneven even in warmer months, but winter made scarcity far more severe, work diminished, supplies thinned, and those already on the margins felt the strain most sharply. You press your tongue lightly against your teeth. Still tasting the last of the bread, it fades quickly. The cold seems to deepen in its absence, settling more firmly into your bones. You draw your arms tighter around yourself, tucking your hands beneath your layers, seeking what little warmth remains. Your stomach tightens, not painfully, not yet, but with a steady reminder that it expects more, that it always expects more. You resist the urge to focus on it. Instead, you listen. The street offers its usual quiet rhythm, though even that seems to have slowed. Fewer footsteps now, fewer voices. The night has reached a point where most movement has ceased, leaving only those who cannot leave. You are among them. A faint rustle nearby draws your attention. Another figure, wrapped in layers as worn as your own, moves closer to the doorway. They pause at the edge, glancing briefly in your direction before settling a short distance away. Close, but not too close. You both understand. Sharing space is one thing. Sharing what little food remains is another. You turn your gaze away, not out of unkindness, but necessity. There is nothing left to give. Hunger teaches that lesson quickly. A soft wind slips through the street, weaker than before, yet still enough to find the small gaps in your clothing. You adjust instinctively, pulling the extra scrap of cloth tighter across your side, sealing the opening. It helps, a little. Your body responds with a faint surge of warmth, brief but noticeable. It reminds you that even small protections matter, especially when your strength is limited. Without sufficient food, your body struggles to maintain heat. It slows, conserving energy where it can, reducing circulation to extremities, focusing on keeping your core alive. You feel that shift. Your fingers grow colder, your toes more distant. It is a trade your body makes without asking. Historians still debate how individuals in such conditions balance the need for movement with the lack of energy. Too much motion could exhaust you. Too little could let the cold take hold more deeply. You find a rhythm, small movements, subtle shifts, enough to keep your blood moving without draining what little strength you have left. Your breathing steadies, slow and controlled. Each inhale feels thin, the air cold and dry, yet you take it in carefully, letting it settle before releasing it in a soft cloud that vanishes almost instantly. You watch that cloud, a simple marker of life. The figure beside you coughs, a low, persistent sound that echoes briefly against the stone. You feel a flicker of concern, though there is little you can do. Illness moves easily among those weakened by hunger and cold. You turn slightly away. Instinct, not judgment. The night stretches further. Time loses its clear shape, measured instead by the slow changes in your body, the rise and fall of your breath, the shifting patterns of discomfort that move from one place to another. Your stomach tightens again, stronger this time. You press a hand lightly against it, as if that might quiet the sensation. It does not, but the gesture offers a small distraction, a way to focus your thoughts elsewhere. You think of warmth, of fires, of rooms filled with steady heat. Not with longing exactly, but as a way to remember that such things exist, even if they are not yours tonight. Then you let the thought drift away. Dwelling on it too long serves no purpose. You return your attention to the present, to the cold, to the careful balance you must maintain. Your body, though strained, continues its quiet work, producing heat where it can, holding on where possible. You help it, by moving, by adjusting, by enduring. The figure beside you shifts again, their layers rustling softly. For a moment, your shoulders nearly touch, a brief contact that sends a faint trace of warmth through the fabric. You do not pull away immediately. Neither do they. It is a small exchange, unspoken. A reminder that even in hunger, even in cold, there are moments where survival overlaps, where proximity offers a slight advantage. Then the moment passes. You settle back into your space. The night remains, long and unyielding. But you are still here, still breathing, still holding on, and that, for now, is enough. You begin to feel the cold rising from below more sharply than before. As if the ground itself has grown impatient, it seeps upward through your worn soles, through layers that were never meant to resist such persistence, and settles into your bones with quiet determination. Standing is no longer enough. You need something between you and the stone. You step away from the doorway, moving slowly along the edge of the street, your eyes scanning the ground with new purpose. In daylight, such a search might seem trivial. At night, in winter, it becomes essential. Insulation is survival. In medieval towns, those without shelter often relied on whatever they could gather to create a barrier against the cold ground: straw, leaves, scraps of cloth, even refuse. Anything that could trap a layer of air and reduce direct contact with frozen surfaces. You find a patch near the base of a wall. There, scattered and partially frozen, lies a thin layer of debris, broken straw mixed with bits of discarded material. It is not much, but it is something. You kneel carefully, testing it with your hand. Rough, dry in places, damp in others. You begin to withdraw, slowly, deliberately, pulling the driest pieces together, forming a small pile. Your fingers move with care, avoiding the wetter patches that would only draw heat away. The process is quiet, almost meditative, each motion focused on a single goal, creating a barrier. The smell rises as you work, a mix of earth, decay, and old straw that clings faintly to your hands. It is not pleasant, but it signals potential, material that can be shaped, arranged, used. You return to your doorway. The figure beside you watches briefly, then looks away, offering no interference. You lower yourself again, placing the gathered straw beneath your feet, spreading it as evenly as you can. It shifts slightly. Uneven, but it lifts you just enough. The difference is immediate, subtle yet unmistakable. The direct bite of the stone lessens, replaced by a duller, more manageable cold. You adjust your stance, pressing down gently to settle the material into place. It holds. For now, you consider sitting carefully. Lowering yourself onto a similar layer might conserve more heat, but it also reduces your ability to move quickly if needed. You hesitate, weighing the options, then decide on a compromise. You crouch, not fully seated, not fully standing. Your body balance between positions. It is not comfortable, but it reduces contact with the ground while keeping you ready to rise. A practical choice. Nearby, the other figure shifts slightly, perhaps noticing your adjustment. After a moment, they begin to gather their own small collection of debris, mimicking your actions in a quiet echo. Knowledge spreads. Knowledge spreads this way, not through the words, but through observation. Historians still debate how much practical survival knowledge circulated among the poorest in medieval society, as such details were rarely recorded. Yet scenes like this suggest a shared understanding, built over time through necessity. You settle into your new position. Your legs begin to ache from the strain, muscles working to hold you steady. It is a different kind of discomfort, one that competes with the cold rather than adding to it. You accept it. Better this than the deeper chill. A faint breeze moves through the street, brushing against your face, your hands. It feels less severe now, perhaps because your body has adjusted, or perhaps because your focus has shifted. You listen. The night remains quiet, though not entirely silent. A distant cart rattles somewhere far off, its sound softened by distance. A door creaks briefly, then closes. The world continues. Even here, you remain within it. Your hands rest against your thighs, fingers curled slightly, conserving warmth. You flex them occasionally, maintaining circulation, careful not to let them grow too still. The straw beneath you rustles softly with each movement, a small reassuring sound. It reminds you that you have created a way to something, however modest, that works in your favour, a thin layer, a slight advantage. It matters. You glance down at your feet, noting how they feel, less numb than before. Not warm, not comfortable, but less threatened. The barrier has slowed the cold's advance, giving your body a chance to hold on to what heat it can. You breathe slowly. Steady, measured. The rhythm helps. It keeps you focused, grounded in the present moment rather than drifting into thoughts that offer no practical benefit. You cannot change the night, you can only adapt to it. The figure beside you coughs again, softer this time, then settles into stillness. You sense their presence, close but separate, each of you occupying your own fragile space within the shared cold. You adjust your posture slightly, easing the strain in your legs. Careful. Careful. Always careful. Too much movement could disrupt your arrangement, scattering the straw, exposing you again to the stone beneath. Too little, and your muscles might stiffen beyond easy recovery. It is a constant balance. You find it. For now. The cold continues its quiet work, pressing in from all sides, yet you meet it with small acts of resistance, A layer of cloth, a shared warmth, a patch of straw. None of them are enough on their own. Together, they give you a chance. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to rest your gaze, to gather your thoughts. The darkness behind your eyelids feels different, softer, less demanding. Then you open them again. The night is still there, unchanged, but you are better prepared to face it. And that in this moment is enough. You begin to notice the air itself more closely, not just its cold, but its weight, its texture, the way it carries everything around you. It is never empty. It holds the traces of survival, layer upon layer, lingering in every breath you take. The smell is constant. At first, it fades into the background, something your senses quietly ignore, but when you pause, when you truly pay attention, it becomes impossible to miss. Damp wool, long unwashed, hangs heavily in the air, mixed with the sharp edge of smoke and the faint sourness of refuse left in corners of the street. It surrounds you. It becomes part of you. Your own clothing carries it, each layer absorbing the sense of countless nights like this one. The fabric near your face feels thick with it, as if the air has settled into the threads and refuses to leave. You adjust your position slightly, pulling your collar higher, though it changes little. In medieval towns, regular washing was a luxury, especially in winter. Water was cold, scarce, and often avoided, as dampness could be more dangerous than dirt. For those living outdoors, cleanliness became secondary to warmth. You understand why. The thought of removing your layers, even briefly, feels unthinkable. The cold would claim too much, too quickly, so the smell remains, building slowly or unnoticed until moments like this. A faint gust moves through the street. It stirs the air, lifting the scent just enough to shift it, to carry new traces with it. Smoke from distant fires drifts in, sharper now, mingling with the existing layers. It stings your nose slightly, a dry, persistent sensation. You inhale carefully. The air feels thin, yet heavy with everything it carries. Each breath reminds you of where you are, of what surrounds you, of how close you are to everything and everyone in this shared space. Nearby, the figure beside you shifts. Their movement releases a fresh wave of scent, damp cloth and human presence, warm in a way that contrasts with the cold air. It is not pleasant, but it signals life, a presence that holds heat, however faint. You do not move away. Instead, you accept it. It is part of this world. A dog passes again, closer this time, its fur matted, its body low. It pauses briefly, sniffing at the ground near your feet, then continues on. Its presence adds another layer to the air, a musky note that lingers for a moment before fading. Everything leaves a trace, even you. Your breath carries its own scent, warm and slightly sweet, mixing with the colder air as it escapes. You watch it form a brief cloud, then disappear, leaving behind only the faintest suggestion of its passing. Historians still debate how people of this time perceived such conditions, whether the constant presence of these smells dulled their awareness, or if they simply accepted them as part of daily life. Written records rarely dwell on such details, yet here they feel unavoidable. You shift your hands again, rubbing them lightly together beneath your layers. The motion releases a subtle warmth, but also stirs the fabric, bringing its scent closer. You notice it more now, the way it clings, the way it defines your immediate space. It is a reminder of time, of repetition, of nights spent enduring rather than resting. A faint drip echoes nearby, water freezing as it touches the ground, adding a thin layer of ice to the already slick surface. The sound is small, but it carries, marking the slow accumulation of cold in the environment around you. You listen. The street remains quiet, though the air feels fuller, as if it holds the memory of everything that has passed through it. Voices, footsteps, breath, all layered together in a way that cannot be separated. You are part of that layering. Your presence adds to it, just as others have before you and will after. The figure beside you coughs again. Softer now, the sound barely rising above a whisper. You sense the warmth of their breath for a brief moment, then it fades, absorbed into the surrounding air. You adjust your posture, careful not to disturb the balance you have found. The straw beneath you rustles faintly, releasing its own earthy scent, dry and faintly comforting compared to the sharper notes around it. It grounds you, a small piece of the natural world even here. You focus on that, on the texture beneath you, on the air moving gently around you, on the steady rhythm of your breath. These details anchor you, keeping your mind from drifting too far, from becoming overwhelmed by the constant pressure of cold and hunger. The night continues, unchanged, yet your awareness deepens, expanding to include not just the obvious challenges, but the subtle ones as well. The air you breathe, the scents you carry, the invisible layers that define this space. You endure them all, not by escaping, but by accepting, by allowing them to exist without resistance, focusing instead on what you can control, your movements, your posture, your breath. It is a quiet form of adaptation, one that requires no tools, no resources, only attention. You take another slow breath. The air fills your lungs, carrying with it everything the night holds. Then you release it and continue. You begin to notice the sounds of illness before you fully understand them. Subtle at first, woven into the quiet rhythm of the night. A cough here, a strained breath there. They rise and fall around you, soft but persistent, like a second kind of wind moving through the street. It is easy to ignore at first, until it is not. The figure beside you coughs again, longer this time. The sound rough and uneven. You feel a slight shift in your own body, a quiet tension that settles into your chest. Illness does not announce itself loudly here. It lingers, creeping slowly from one person to another. Cold invites it. So does hunger. In medieval towns, winter illnesses spread easily among those without shelter. Conditions like chest infections, fevers, and what we would now recognize as respiratory diseases were common, though their exact nature often went unrecorded. You listen more carefully now. The coughs are not all the same. Some are dry and sharp, breaking the silence in brief bursts. Others are deeper, heavier, followed by long pauses that stretch uncomfortably. Each one tells a different story, though none of them end well. You shift slightly, creating a small space between you and the figure beside you. Not far, just enough. It is an instinctive reaction, a quiet attempt to protect yourself, even if you are not entirely sure it will help. The warmth they offer is still there, faint but real, and you are reluctant to lose it completely. A difficult balance. You pull your layers closer around your face, tucking your chin down, using the fabric as a thin barrier against the air. It changes little, but it feels like something. A small act of control in a situation where control is limited. Your breath warms the cloth briefly, then it cools again. Across the street, another figure stirs, their movements slow and uneven. They lean against the wall, their head tilted back, their breathing audible even from a distance. It is laboured, each inhale followed by a slight pause, as if the air itself resists them. You watch for a moment, then look away. There is nothing you can do. In some medieval accounts, illness was often attributed to imbalances in the body or influences in the air, rather than the invisible spread we understand today. Treatments varied, but for those on the street, access to care was rare. Historians still debate how much practical knowledge existed about preventing illness in such conditions, as survival often depended more on circumstance than understanding. You feel that uncertainty now. You shift your hands again, rubbing them lightly beneath your layers, trying to maintain warmth. The motion is familiar, almost automatic. Yet it carries a new awareness. Your body must stay strong. Or at least strong enough. A faint wheeze reaches your ears from somewhere further down the street, followed by a soft groan. It fades quickly, swallowed by the night. But it leaves an impression, a reminder of how fragile this balance is. You adjust your posture again, careful not to grow too still. Movement helps. It keeps your body engaged, your circulation active, your warmth from slipping too quickly, yet you must conserve energy, avoiding unnecessary strain. Another balance. The figure beside you shifts, pulling their layers tighter, their movements slower than before. Their coughing has quieted, replaced by a steady and shallow breathing that feels almost more concerning. You listen, counting the breaths without meaning to, each one a marker, each one a question. You turn your gaze back to the street, focusing on what you can see, what you can control. The ground glistens faintly with frost, the stone walls holding the cold in their silent way. The air remains still, heavy with everything it carries. You take a slow breath, careful, measured. Your chest feels tight, though you cannot tell if it is the cold, the air, or something else entirely. You shift again, trying to ease the sensation, to keep it from settling deeper. See? A distant bell rings. It sounds soft and far away. Another hour passing. Another stretch of night endured. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to gather yourself, to steady your thoughts. The sounds of coughing, of breathing, a quiet struggle continue around you, forming a backdrop you cannot escape. Then you open them again. The night remains, unchanged, yet your awareness of it has deepened, expanding to include not just the cold and the hunger, but the fragile state of the bodies around you, each one fighting its own quiet battle. You remain part of that. You adjust your layers once more, pulling them tighter, sealing in what warmth you can. Your hands move with practiced care, ensuring no gaps remain, no easy path for the cold to enter. Every detail matters, especially now. The figure beside you exhales slowly, their breath visible for a brief moment before fading. You watch it, noting its rhythm, its steadiness, holding on to the small reassurance it offers. They are still here. So are you. You shift your weight again, maintaining your position, your balance, your awareness. The night is long and the risks are many, but you continue, step by careful step, breath by steady breath, enduring not just the cold, but everything that comes with it. You begin to notice the animals more clearly now, not just as passing shapes in the dark, but as part of the same quiet struggle. They move with purpose, though their bodies low, their senses sharp, navigating the night with an ease you cannot help but observe. One approaches again, the same dog, perhaps, or another much like it. Its fur is thick, though uneven in places, matted from long days without care. It pauses a few steps away, watching you with a cautious stillness, its breath rising in faint clouds. You remain still, not wanting to startle it. Animals survive differently. They carry their warmth with them, fur-trapping heat close to the body in a way your layered cloth can only imitate. They move when they need to, rest when they can, guided by the instincts shaped for conditions like these. You envy that, quietly. The dog steps closer, slow, careful. Careful. It lowers itself to the ground near the edge of your doorway, curling its body into a tight shape, nose tucked beneath its tail. Its movements are deliberate, conserving heat, reducing exposure, much like your own. You watch it settle. There is a shared understanding here. Not friendship, not quite, but a recognition of mutual presence. You both occupy this space, drawn by the same need to endure the cold in whatever way you can. You shift slightly, testing. Your shoulder moves closer, just enough to feel the faint warmth that radiates from its body. It is subtle, but real, carried through the air in a thin, fragile layer. The dog does not move away. That is enough. You ease a little closer, careful not to press, maintaining a respectful distance. The warmth grows slightly stronger, blending with your own, creating a small pocket where the cold feels less immediate. A quiet advantage. In some accounts, animals and humans shared space during harsh conditions, though the details are rarely recorded. Whether this was common practice or occasional coincidence remains uncertain. Historians still argue how often such interactions occurred, as animals were often seen as both companions and nuisances, depending on circumstance. You feel the complexity now. The dog shifts, adjusting its position, its fur brushing lightly against your outer layer. The contact is brief, but it sends a noticeable warmth through the fabric. You hold still, allowing the moment to settle. It helps. More than you expected. The smell is stronger here, a mix of damp fur and the street's lingering scents, yet it carries a different quality, something closer to life, to movement, to survival in its rawest form. You accept it. Your hands remain tucked beneath your layers, but you angle your body slightly toward the dog, maximizing the shared warmth without disturbing it. The posture feels natural, almost instinctive, as if your body recognizes the benefit without needing to think. The night continues around you. Quiet, still. A distant sound echoes briefly, then fades, leaving the two of you in a small shared silence. The cold presses in from all sides, yet within this narrow space it feels just a little less severe. You listen to the dog's breathing. Slow, steady! It creates a rhythm that blends with your own, the two patterns aligning in a way that feels oddly calming. For a moment, the tension in your shoulders eases, your body responding to the presence beside you. Even here, there is comfort. Unexpected, fleeting. You shift your feet slightly, careful not to disturb the straw beneath you. The barrier still holds, reducing the cold from the ground, while the dog's warmth softens the air at your side. Together, they create a fragile balance. You close your eyes for a moment. Not fully, just enough to rest them. The darkness behind your eyelids feels softer now, less demanding, as if the edge of the night has dulled slightly. You remain aware, listening for any change, any movement that might require your attention. The dog stirs briefly, then settles again. It trusts the space, at least for now. You open your eyes. The street remains as it was, dim and quiet, the shapes of buildings and shadows unchanged. Yet your experience of it has shifted, influenced by this small, shared warmth. It reminds you that survival is not always solitary. Even when it feels that way, you adjust your posture again, maintaining the delicate arrangement you have found. Too much movement could break it, sending the dog away, exposing you once more to the full force of the cold. You remain still, balanced, aware. The hours pass slowly, marked not by bells or voices, but by the subtle changes in your body, the ebb and flow of warmth, the steady rhythm of breath beside you. You endure, not alone, not entirely, and in this small, quiet way, the night becomes just a little more bearable. You begin to sense patterns in the way people move and settle through the night, subtle connections forming between those who share the same harsh reality. It is not friendship in the way you might expect, but something quieter, something shaped by necessity, a kind of bond. You shift slightly within your doorway, careful not to disturb the dog beside you. The warmth it provides has become part of your awareness now, a steady presence you no longer question around you. Other figures remain in their chosen places, each guarding their own small pocket of survival. Yet there is a rhythm to it, a quiet coordination. The figure who gathered straw earlier now adjusts their position again, their movements deliberate, refining the small barrier they created. Another, further down the street, rises briefly, walking a short distance before returning, as if testing the air, The space, the safety of the surroundings, the poor. No one directs this. It simply happens. In medieval life, those living on the margins often formed loose communities, not structured or formal, but built on shared experience. They watched each other, learned from each other, and sometimes offered small, unspoken assistance. You feel that here. In the way no one intrudes too far into another's area. In the way movements are mirrored, adapted, refined. A collective understanding. The dog shifts again, its body pressing slightly closer. You adjust in response, maintaining the balance, allowing the shared warmth to continue without disruption. The motion draws a brief glance from the figure beside you, who nods almost imperceptibly. A small acknowledgement. You return it with a slight movement of your own. Nothing more. Words are unnecessary. A faint sound draws your attention. A soft scrape against stone. You look toward the source and see another person dragging a piece of wood, small and worn, likely gathered from somewhere nearby. They position it carefully near their feet, creating a barrier between themselves and the ground. You watch, learning. Each action offers a possibility, a new way to resist the cold bombs. However slightly, you consider whether you might find something similar, but decide against leaving your current position. The risk of losing what you have gained feels too great. You stay. The night deepens further. The air grows stiller, heavier, as if the world itself has settled into a quiet pause. The sounds that remain are softer now, breathing, shifting fabric, the occasional cough, all blending into a low, continuous hum. You are part of it, a network of presence. Historians still argue how cohesive such groups were, whether they functioned as true communities or simply coexisted out of necessity. The evidence is limited, leaving much to interpretation. You feel both possibilities. There is no clear boundary between them. A figure across the street stirs, their movements unsteady. They rise, take a few steps, then pause, swaying slightly. For a moment, it seems they might fall, but another nearby shifts closer, steadying them with a brief touch. It lasts only a second. Then they separate again. No words, no lingering contact, yet the gesture carries meaning. You watch it carefully, noting the way it happens without hesitation, without expectation of reward. It's not kindness in the way stories often describe, but it is something close, something practical. You adjust your layers again, pulling the extra cloth tighter, ensuring it remains in place. The habit continues, each small movement reinforcing the fragile defenses you have built. The dog exhales softly, its breath warm against your side. You feel it, a steady reassurance. Yeah? Your own breathing slows to match the rhythm, the two patterns aligning once more. It creates a sense of permanence, not comfort exactly, but a steadiness that helps you endure. Across the street, the figure who received the blanket of Slayer shifts beneath it, pulling it closer, tucking it around their body. The fabric catches the faint light, its edges worn but intact. You note it, another method, another layer. The knowledge accumulates piece by piece, forming a quiet understanding of how to survive here. Not through grand solutions, but through small subtle, repeated actions, shared, observed, adapted. You shift your feet slightly, pressing them into the straw beneath you. The barrier still holds, though it has compressed over time, its effectiveness slowly diminishing. You consider adjusting it, but decide to wait, conserving energy. Every movement has a cost. You measure it carefully. The night continues its slow passage, each moment blending into the next. The cold remains constant, yet your ability to manage it has improved, shaped by the environment and the people around you. You are learning, even now, even here. The figure beside you settles into stillness, their breathing steady, their presence a quiet companion in the shared space. The dog remains curled, its warmth consistent, its trust unspoken. You remain aware, watching, listening, part of something larger than yourself, even if it has no name, no structure, no clear boundaries, a loose gathering of individuals, each enduring, each contributing in small, subtle ways. Together, in the only way that matters here, through the night, you begin to notice that not everything guiding behavior in the night is practical. Some actions seem shaped by belief, by quiet rituals that offer comfort even when their purpose is unclear. You see it in small gestures. A figure near the edge of the street traces a pattern in the frost with a gloved finger, slow and deliberate. Another murmurs softly, repeating the same words under their breath, their voice barely rising above the silence. You listen. The words are too faint to catch, yet the rhythm is steady, almost soothing, carries a sense of intention, as if the act itself holds meaning beyond what can be heard. Belief offers warmth, or at least the feeling of it. In medieval life, superstition and faith often intertwined, shaping how people understood the world around them. The cold, the illness, the uncertainty of survival, all could be interpreted through unseen forces, blessings, curses, or protective acts. You watch as the figure finishes their pattern in the frost door. They pause, then brush it away, as if resetting something unseen. You tilt your head slightly, considering the motion. It does not change the cold, it does not alter the wind or the weight of the night, yet it seems to steady them, to give shape to something that would otherwise feel uncontrollable. You understand that, in your own way, you pull your layers tighter, a familiar action, yet now it feels almost ritualistic. The repetition, the careful adjustment, the attention to detail. It becomes more than habit. It becomes a way of asserting control, even if only briefly. The dog beside you stirs, lifting its head for a moment before settling again. Its movements are instinctive, unburdened by belief, guided by immediate needs rather than unseen meanings. You envy that clarity, yet you remain human. Your thoughts drift. You recall fragments of stories, things heard in passing, warnings about cold nights, about spirits that wandered when the air grew still, about unseen presences that tested the vulnerable. You do not fully believe them, but you do not dismiss them entirely either. The night encourages such thoughts. A faint wind moves through the street, carrying with it a soft whisper that seems almost like a voice. You know it is only air moving through narrow spaces, yet for a moment it feels like something more. You listen carefully, then let it pass. Historians still argue how deeply such beliefs influence daily survival, whether they provided genuine psychological comfort or simply reflected the uncertainties of the time. The line between practical action and ritual often blurred. You feel that blur now, in the way your hands move, in the way you position yourself, in the small habits that repeat without conscious thought. A figure across the street pulls a small object from beneath their layers, holding it briefly in their hands. It catches the faint light, something simple, perhaps a token, a piece of metal or wood. They close their eyes, just for a moment, then tuck it away again. You watch without staring, respecting the quiet privacy of the act. It is not for you to question. It is part of how they endure, just as your own actions are part of how you endure. Different paths, same purpose. You shift your weight slightly, pressing your feet deeper into the straw beneath you. The barrier has thinned, its effectiveness reduced, yet it still offers some protection. You consider adjusting it again, then decide to wait. Energy must be conserved. Always. The dog exhales softly, its breath warm against your side. You focus on that sensation, grounding yourself in something tangible, something real. It helps steady your thoughts, keeping them from drifting too far into uncertainty. You take a slow breath, then another. Your breathing becomes a rhythm, a quiet anchor in the shifting landscape of the night. Each inhale brings cold air into your lungs. Each exhale releases it in a soft cloud that fades quickly. You watch it disappear, a simple, repeated act, yet it feels significant. Across the street, the figure who traced the pattern earlier begins again, their finger moving slowly over the frost. The shape is different this time, more complex, though its meaning remains unclear. You do not need to understand it. You only need to recognize its purpose, to endure, to create a sense of control, to push back, however gently, against the vast uncertainty that surrounds you. You adjust your layers once more, the fabric shifting softly, sealing in what warmth you can. The motion feels deliberate, almost ceremonial in its repetition, a ritual of survival. Survival. The night continues, unchanged. Yet within it, these small acts, these quiet beliefs, these repeated motions, they shape the experience, offering structure where none exists, comfort where little can be found. You remain within that structure, part of it, guided by both necessity and something less defined, something that exists just beneath the surface of your awareness. You endure not only through action, but through meaning, however small, however uncertain, and the night, vast and silent, continues to hold you within it. You begin to notice something unsettling about the layers people wear, a quiet detail that becomes clearer the longer you observe. Not all cloth is gathered from scraps or discarded pieces. Some garments carry a different weight, a history that lingers in their stitching. Clothing does not vanish. It changes hands. You shift slightly in your doorway, your eyes tracing the outline of a figure across the street. Their outer layer is thicker than most, worn but intact, its shape suggesting it once belonged to someone of better means. It does not quite fit them, hanging loosely at the shoulders, the sleeves too long. You wonder, where did it come from? In medieval life, clothing was valuable, often passed down, repaired, and reused until it could no longer hold together. For those with nothing, garments might be acquired in less direct ways, through charity, through trade, or through circumstances less spoken of. You feel a quiet awareness settle in. The night is not only about those who endure it, it is also about those who did not. The thought lingers as you adjust your own layers, fingers brushing against the rough edges of cloth that have clearly seen many seasons. You do not know their origin. Perhaps it is better that way. Ignorance can be a kind of comfort. A faint movement draws your attention. Further down the street, two figures stand close together, speaking in low tones. Between them lies a bundle, partially obscured by shadow. One of them kneels, carefully unfolding it, revealing layers of fabric within. They work quickly, efficiently. You watch without staring, your gaze soft, your awareness sharp. The fabric is worn yet usable, thicker than most of what you see around you. It is handled with care, as if its value is understood fully. Then the bundle is closed again, lifted, carried away. You do not ask questions. Here, questions often lead nowhere useful. Historians still argue how frequently clothing was repurposed from those who had died, particularly during harsh winters when survival was uncertain. Records are sparse, and the reality is often left to interpretation. You feel the possibility of it now, quiet, unspoken. You pull your layers tighter, not out of fear, but out of instinct, as if reaffirming what is yours, however temporary that ownership might be. The fabric scratches lightly against your skin, grounding you in the present. The dog beside you shifts, its warmth steady, unaffected by such thoughts. It lives in the immediate, in the simple cycle of rest and movement, hunger and survival. You envy that simplicity again. Across the street, the figure with the oversized garment adjusts it, pulling the sleeves back, securing them more tightly around their arms. The motion is practiced, familiar, suggesting they have done this many times before. Adaptation. Always! You notice the way the cloth holds its shape better than thinner layers, how it seems to resist the wind more effectively. It offers a glimpse of what more substantial protection might feel like, even if it comes with its own quiet story. You look down at your own hands. The fabric there is thinner, more worn, yet it still serves its purpose. It traps what little warmth you have, shields you from the worst of the air, and remains yours for now. That is enough. A faint breeze moves through the street, stirring loose edges of cloth, creating a soft rustling sound that blends with the quiet of the night. It feels almost like a whisper, a reminder of the many layers, both visible and unseen, that define this place. You listen. The sounds remain subtle. A cough, a shift, the faint movement of fabric against stone. Life continues in these small ways. You adjust your posture again, careful not to disturb the balance you have built. The straw beneath you compresses slightly, its effectiveness diminishing, yet still present. You consider gathering more, then decide against it. Staying is safer. The figure beside you remains still, their breathing steady, their presence a quiet constant. You are aware of them, just as they are aware of you, each respecting the fragile boundary that allows both of you to endure. A shared space, a shared night. You take a slow breath, feeling the cold air fill your lungs, then release it in a soft cloud that fades quickly. The motion steadies you, bringing your focus back to what matters now. Not where the cloth came from, not what it once was, but what it is now. A barrier, a tool, a means of survival. Historians may debate the origins of such garments, the paths they took from one life to another. But here, in this moment, those questions hold little weight. You use what you have. You adapt. You endure. The night does not pause for reflection, and neither can you. The cold continues its steady pressure. The hours stretch on, and you remain within it, holding on to every small advantage you can find. You draw your layers closer once more. Secure, present. Enough! And the night carries on. You begin to notice the snow more carefully, not just as something that falls, but as something that shapes the night itself. It gathers in quiet layers, soft at first, then slowly changing as the hours pass. It is not always your enemy. You shift slightly, watching the way it settles along the edges of the street, collecting in corners, piling gently against walls and doorways. In some places, it forms a thin barrier, catching the wind and softening its force before it reaches you. Snow can shield. In medieval winters, heavy snowfall sometimes created natural insulation, covering the ground and reducing the direct bite of cold stone. Yet it also carried danger, trapping moisture, numbing the body, and hiding hazards beneath its surface. You see both sides. The patch of ground near your feet is dusted with it now, a light layer that crunches faintly when disturbed. It looks soft, almost inviting, yet you know better than to trust it completely. You test it with your foot carefully. The surface compresses, revealing the harder ground beneath. Still cold, still unforgiving. The snow has changed the texture, not the truth of what lies below. Still, it helps a little. You shift your stance, allowing some of it to gather along the edges of your straw layer, creating a small barrier that blocks the wind from slipping underneath. The effect is subtle, but noticeable. A small improvement. Nearby, the dog stirs, lifting its head as a few flakes drift down, catching briefly in its fur before melting. It shakes lightly, then curls tighter, its body adjusting instinctively to the changing conditions. You watch the motion. Learning again, across the street, another figure pulls snow closer to their position, packing it gently against the base of the wall. At first, the action seems strange, but as you observe, you begin to understand. They are building a shield. The packed snow forms a low barrier, blocking the wind that sweeps along the ground. It is not perfect, but it alters the flow of air, redirecting it just enough to make a difference. You consider doing the same. Slowly, you reach down, gathering a handful of snow from the edge of your space. It feels cold, almost painfully so, biting into your fingers through the thin fabric. You work quickly, pressing it into place along the side of your straw. The sensation is sharp, then dull. You withdraw your hand, tucking it back beneath your layers, waiting for the feeling to return. It does, gradually, accompanied by a faint ache that signals warmth trying to reassert itself. You look at your work. The snow sits unevenly, not as well formed as the barrier across the street. But it is something. It interrupts the path of the wind, creating a small pocket where the air feels slightly less aggressive. You test it, leaning slightly. The difference is there. Not dramatic, but real. Historians still argue how often such techniques were used, as the practical details of daily survival were rarely recorded in written accounts. The idea of snow as insulation is well understood today, but its application in medieval street life remains uncertain. You feel its effect now. Direct, immediate. A faint breeze moves through the street, brushing against your face, your hands. When it reaches the barrier you have created, it shifts, its path altered, its force reduced. You sense the change, subtle but meaningful. You adjust your position to take advantage of it. Turning slightly, aligning yourself with the new flow of air, the dog presses closer, its body responding to the same change, its warmth steady against your side. Together, you occupy this small, modified space, shaped by your actions and the snow itself, a shared refuge. The flakes continue to fall, light and steady, adding to the thin layer around you. They settle on your clothing, melting slowly, leaving behind faint traces of moisture that you brush away when you can. Dampness remains a concern. Always, you are careful not to let it build, not to allow it to soak into your layers where it would steal heat more effectively than the air itself. You shake your shoulders lightly, dislodging what you can. The motion helps. A little. Across the street, the figure with the snow barrier adjusts it again, smoothing its surface, reinforcing its edges. Their movements are practiced now, confident, as if they have done this many times before. You mirror them, refining your own small structure. Each adjustment brings a slight improvement, a better angle, a more effective block against the wind. It becomes a quiet task, something to focus on, something to shape with your hands, something to control. The night continues. The snow falls. The cold remains. Yet within it, you find ways to adapt, to use what surrounds you, to turn even the harshest elements into tools for survival. You settle back into your position, your body aligned with the barrier, your layers adjusted, your awareness steady. The space you occupy feels different now, shaped by your actions, influenced by the snow that continues to gather. It is still cold, still difficult, but slightly more manageable, and in this night that is enough. You begin to notice the sounds more than the sights now, as if the night has dimmed the world enough that hearing becomes your clearest guide. The street is darker than before, shapes blending into shadow, but the sounds remain, drifting through the cold air with quiet persistence. They tell you everything. A distant bell rings again, softer this time, its tone muted by the snow that has begun to settle along the rooftops and streets. It marks another passing hour, though you no longer count them in any precise way. You feel them instead, in your body, in the slow shift of the cold, closer to you. The soft crunch of footsteps echoes briefly, then fades. Someone passes through the street, their pace quick, their presence fleeting. You do not look directly, relying instead on the sound to track their movement. Safer that way. The dog beside you exhales, a low, steady breath that blends with your own. Its presence has become part of the soundscape now, a constant rhythm that grounds you in this small shared space. You listen to it, matching it. A faint scrape reaches your ears from somewhere nearby, the sound of cloth brushing against stone. Another figure adjusts their position, the movement careful, deliberate, designed to conserve heat without drawing attention. Even small sounds matter. In medieval towns, the night carried a different character than the day. Without the constant noise of work and movement, every sound stood out more clearly, shaping how people understood their surroundings. You feel that clarity now. A whisper of wind moves through the street, slipping past your snow barrier, softer than before, its path altered by the structures you have built. It carries with it a faint hiss, a subtle sound that rises and falls as it passes. You turn your head slightly, listening. The wind speaks in its own way, telling you where it moves, where it gathers strength, where it weakens. You adjust your posture in response, aligning yourself with its quieter currents. A small advantage. Further down the street, a cough breaks the silence, followed by another, then a third. The sounds overlap briefly, creating a pattern that spreads and fades, like ripples in still water. You recognize it. The presence of illness. It moves through the night as surely as the cold, carried in breath and proximity, shaping the rhythm of survival in ways that are difficult to escape. You shift slightly, maintaining your distance where you can, while still holding on to the warmth you share with the dog. The balance remains delicate, each decision carrying its own weight. A faint clatter echoes from a nearby alley, the sound of something small striking the ground. You tense briefly, your body responding before your mind fully processes the noise. Then stillness returns. No follow-up. You relax just enough. The night continues its quiet performance, each sound a note in a larger composition that you are now attuned to. The absence of sound matters as much as its presence, telling you when the street is empty, when it is safe to remain still. Historians still argue how much reliance people placed on such sensory awareness, as written records rarely capture these subtle aspects of daily life. Yet here, it feels essential. You depend on it. Your eyes close briefly, not to sleep, but to sharpen your hearing, to focus entirely on the sounds around you. The cold air brushes against your face, your hands, your layers, yet your attention remains on what you can hear. A faint murmur reaches you, distant and indistinct. Voices, perhaps, carried from another street, softened by distance and snow. They rise and fall, then disappear, leaving behind only the quiet once more. You open your eyes. The darkness remains, unchanged, yet your understanding of it has deepened, shaped by the sounds that move through it. You are no longer simply enduring the night. You are reading it, interpreting its signals, adapting to its shifts. The dog shifts again, its body pressing slightly closer. You feel the warmth, the steady presence, and adjust in response, maintaining the fragile balance you have built. The straw beneath you rustles softly, a familiar sound. It reassures you that your barrier remains in place, that your small defenses are still working. You press your feet down gently, testing it, confirming its stability. It holds, for now. A distant door creaks open, then closes, the sound carrying further in the quiet. You imagine the brief escape of warmth, the momentary contrast between inside and outside, though you do not move to seek it. You stay. Your position is good. Your awareness is sharp. The night continues to unfold around you, each sound marking its passage, each kisen offering a moment of stillness. You remain within it, listening, adapting, enduring. The cold presses on. The hours stretch, and you continue, guided not by sight alone, but by the quiet language of the night itself. You begin to sense another presence moving through the night, one that does not belong to the quiet rhythm of survival. It carries authority, structure, and a certain unpredictability that makes you straighten instinctively. Law moves differently. You hear it first. The steady rhythm of boots against stone, measured and deliberate, approaching from the far end of the street. It is not hurried, not uncertain. It follows a path, one that has likely been walked many times before. You turn your head slightly. Careful! A lantern swings into view, its light cutting through the dimness in slow arcs. Behind it, a figure walks with purpose, their posture upright despite the cold, their gaze scanning the street with practiced attention. A guard. You feel the shift immediately. Around you, others react in small, subtle ways. A figure presses deeper into a doorway, another lowers their head, pulling their layers tighter, reducing their presence as much as possible. You do the same, not out of skill, but out of caution. In medieval towns, laws often regulated where beggars could stay, especially at night. Certain areas were restricted, and those found in the wrong place risked being moved along, regardless of the weather. Or worse, historians still argue how strictly such rules were enforced, as practices varied widely between regions and authorities. Some guards showed leniency, others followed orders without hesitation. You do not know which this one will be. The boots grow louder, closer. The lantern light reaches you now, illuminating the edge of your doorway, casting your shadow long against the wall. You keep your movements minimal, your posture still, hoping to blend into the background. The dog beside you remains quiet, its presence small, unobtrusive. The guard pauses, just a few steps away. You feel the moment stretch, the air tightening as if the cold itself has paused to watch. The lantern shifts slightly, its light brushing over your position, revealing just enough to confirm your presence. You do not move. Not yet. The guard studies the space, their expression unreadable in the shifting light. For a brief moment, it seems they might speak, might gesture, might demand that you leave. Instead, they continue. The boots resume their steady rhythm, the lantern light moving on, casting new shadows further down the street. The tension eases, slowly, like a held breath, finally released. You remain still for a moment longer, then shift slightly. Careful, the relief is subtle, but real. You have not been moved. Your position remains yours, at least for now, around you. Others begin to relax as well. Their small adjustments signalling the passing of the immediate threat. The night returns to its quieter state, yet something has changed. You are reminded that your place here is not guaranteed, that even the small refuges you find exist at the discretion of forces beyond your control. You adjust your layers again, the motion familiar, grounding, the extra cloth, the straw, the snow barrier. All of it remains in place, that your fragile defense is intact. For now, a faint sound reaches you from further down the street, a voice raised briefly, then lowered. You cannot make out the words, but the tone suggests an exchange, perhaps a warning, perhaps a command. You listen, then let it fade. In some towns, repeated encounters with guards shape the behavior of those living on the streets, teaching them where to stay, when to move, how to avoid attention. This knowledge became part of survival, as important as warmth or food. You feel that knowledge forming now, a quiet understanding. You shift your position slightly, angling your body to remain less visible from the main path while still maintaining your view of the street. It is a small adjustment, but it could matter. Every detail matters. The dog exhales softly, its warmth steady, unchanged by the passing authority. You focus on that, on the tangible, on what you can rely on. Your breath follows. Slow, measured, the cold remains pressing us in from all sides. Yet your awareness has expanded to include these additional layers, the movements of others, the presence of law, the subtle shifts that shape the night. You endure within all of it, not just the cold, but the structure that surrounds it. The unseen rules, the quiet boundaries, the moments of tension that come and go without warning. You remain alert, listening, watching, ready to adjust if needed. The night continues its slow passage, the lantern light now distant, the boots fading into memory. The street settles once more into its familiar rhythm, shaped by those who remain. You are still here, still holding your place, still enduring, and that, in this moment, is enough. You begin to sense a subtle change in the air, not warmer exactly, but different, as if the night has reached its deepest point and is now, slowly, reluctantly, beginning to loosen its hold. It is almost perceptible, yet you feel it. Your body responds first. The tightness in your chest eases just slightly. Your breathing becomes a touch deeper, less strained, as though the air itself has shifted in some quiet way. Dawn is approaching, not visible yet, but present in the rhythm of the world. You lift your gaze towards the sky, what little you can see between the narrow lines of buildings. It remains dark, though there is a faint lightening at the edges, a softness that was not there before. You watch it, carefully. In medieval life, the arrival of morning carried significance beyond simple light. It marked the return of activity, of movement, of opportunity. However limited, for those enduring the night outdoors, it also meant survival. One more night passed. You hold on to that thought. Your hands shift beneath your layers, testing the feeling in your fingers. They are still cold, still stiff, but the sharpest edge of numbness has receded. Sensation returns slowly, bringing with it a dull ache that feels almost welcome. You flex them, gently. The motion helps. Beside you, the dog stirs, lifting its head as if sensing the same change. It stretches slightly, its body lengthening before curling again, not fully waking, but no longer as deeply still as before. The world is stirring. Even here, a faint sound reaches your ears, distant at first, then clearer, a door opening, a voice speaking in a low, practical tone. The first signs of morning activity begin to ripple through the town. You listen. The rhythm is different now, less cautious, more purposeful. Across the street, the figure with the blanket shifts, pulling it aside slightly as they sit up. Their movements are slow, careful, as if testing their own strength after the long night. You watch them. They are still here. That matters. Historians still debate how many individuals survived such nights consistently, as records often focus on larger patterns rather than personal outcomes. The quiet reality of each morning, who rose and who did not, remains largely unknown. You feel the weight of that uncertainty. You look around. The shapes in the street become clearer as the darkness softens. The outlines of doorways, walls, and figures sharpen, emerging from shadow into something more defined. You shift your position, slowly rising from your crouch. Your legs protest at first, stiff from hours of holding the same posture. You straighten carefully, allowing the blood to flow more freely. The sensation returns, gradual, uneven. You take a small step, testing your balance. The straw beneath you shifts, its usefulness nearly spent, yet it has done its work. You step off it, feeling the cold stone again, though it seems less severe now. Or perhaps you are simply more prepared. A faint glow begins to appear at the far end of the street. Not sunlight yet, but a hint of it, reflecting off surfaces, signalling what is to come. It carries with it a quiet sense of relief, not dramatic, but steady. You breathe it in. The air feels different. Still cold, but less oppressive, as if the night itself is releasing its grip. The dog rises now, shaking lightly, its fur shedding a few flakes of snow. It looks at you briefly, then turns, moving down the street with a quiet confidence, drawn by its own needs as the day approaches. You watch it go. Its warmth leaves with it, yet you feel stronger. Enough to continue. Across the street, others begin to move as well. Small adjustments, slow rises, careful steps. The stillness of the night gives way to the cautious motion of morning. You are part of that gym. You take another step, then another, your body responding more easily now. The stiffness fades gradually, replaced by a tentative sense of control. You have made it through this night. Not all will. The thought lingers, quiet and heavy, yet you do not dwell on it. There's no time for that now. The day brings its own challenges, its own demands, its own need for attention. You adjust your layers once more, securing them for what comes next. The extra cloth, the worn fabric, the remnants of your defences, all remain with you, tools to carry into the daylight. You look down the street. The faint light grows stronger. The shapes become clearer. The world returns. You take a slow breath, filling your lungs with the cold morning air, then release it in a soft cloud that fades more slowly now, lingering just a moment longer in the changing light. You stand, steady, present, ready to move, because survival does not end with the night. It continues. Into the morning, you begin to realize that not every night is spent in the same place. Not for long. The street you endured last evening may not be the one you return to tomorrow. Movement, quiet and constant, becomes part of survival. You take a slow step forward, testing your legs as the morning light grows. The faint glow now stretches further across the street, revealing more detail, more texture, more evidence of what the night concealed. Footprints in the snow, scraps left behind, the subtle traces of those who passed through. You are one of them. In medieval life, many of the poorest did not remain fixed in one location. They moved between towns, villages, and cities, following opportunity, avoiding hostility, and seeking places where survival might be slightly easier. You feel that pull now, a quiet suggestion at the edge of your thoughts. Stay here, where you know the corners, the doorways, the patterns of the night, or move, following the faint promise of something better, something less harsh, somewhere else. You look down the street. People are beginning to disperse. The figure with the blanket folds it carefully, wrapping it close around their body before moving off. Another gathers their few belongings, such as they are, and heads toward the edge of the town, their steps slow but steady. No one announces their departure. They simply go. You shift your weight, considering your own position. The doorway that sheltered you, the straw that protected your feet, the snow barrier you shaped, all of it belongs to the night. The day changes everything. A cart rattles past, its wheels cutting through the thin layer of snow, leaving tracks that quickly fill with slush. The driver does not look your way, their focus fixed ahead, on work, on purpose. You step aside, making space. The town is waking. With it comes a different kind of movement, more structured, more visible. Staying in certain places may no longer be possible, not without drawing attention. You understand that. Instinctively, historians still argue how frequently such movement occurred, whether it was seasonal, driven by weather alone, or shaped by broader patterns of work and charity. The records offer fragments, but not a complete picture. You feel the fragments come together here, in your own choices. You take a few steps down the street, your body adjusting to motion after the long stillness of the night. Each step feels slightly easier than the last, the stiffness easing, replaced by a cautious rhythm. You move slowly, observing. The air carries new scents now, fresh bread from somewhere nearby, smoke from morning fires, the faint trace of something cooking. They mingle with the lingering smells of the night, creating a layered atmosphere that shifts with each breath. You follow it briefly, not toward a specific place, but toward possibility. Across the street, a small group gathers near a corner, their posture suggesting conversation, quiet and practical. They glance at one another, then in different directions, as if deciding where to go next. You recognize the moment. Decision. Stay or move, wait or search. Each choice carries its own risks. You pause.
Your feet still, your breath steady.
The dog is gone now, its presence replaced by the movement of people beginning their day. The shared warmth of the night has dissolved, leaving each individual to navigate the morning alone once more. You feel that shift, the quiet separation. You adjust your layers again, securing them for travel. The extra cloth remains in place, the worn fabric holding what little warmth it can as you move. It will serve you wherever you go. For now, a faint breeze moves through the street, carrying with it the sounds of the waking town. Voices, distant but growing, footsteps more frequent, the slow return of activity that defines the day. You listen, then begin to walk. Not quickly, not aimlessly, but with a sense of direction shaped by instinct and experience. Even if that direction is not fully clear, you follow the street as it curves, leading you toward the edge of this place, or perhaps deeper into it. You do not know yet, and that is part of it. Movement offers possibility. It also carries uncertainty. You accept both. The morning light strengthens, revealing more of the world around you, yet also exposing you more clearly within it. You keep to the edges, as you did at night, though for different reasons now. Less about hiding, more about avoiding disruption. A figure passes you, their pace steady, their gaze forward. They do not acknowledge you, yet their presence adds to the sense of motion, of change, of a world shifting from night to day. You continue, step by step, carrying with you the lessons of the night, the small adaptations of the quiet strategies that kept you here. They will shape what comes next, guiding your choices as the day unfolds. You do not leave the night behind. You carry it with you, in your movements, in your awareness, in the quiet understanding that survival is not tied to a single place, but to your ability to adapt, to move, to find what you need wherever you are. You walk on. The town opens before you, and the day begins. You begin to notice how the night, even at its coldest, is rarely silent for long. When movement slows and the wind settles, voices sometimes take its place, soft at first, then growing as people draw closer to one another. Stories fill the gaps. You recall moments from earlier, fragments of quiet exchanges that passed between those sharing space. A few words here, brief murmur there. Now, as the memory returns, you understand their purpose more clearly. They help the hours pass. You slow your steps slightly, drifting closer to a small cluster near the edge of the street. They are not gathered tightly, not like the huddles for warmth, but close enough that their voices carry from one to another. You listen. A man speaks in a low tone, his words steady, measured, as if he has told this story before. You cannot catch every detail, but you hear enough. Mentions of a distant town, a journey taken long ago, a winter even harsher than this one. The others listen, quietly. Stories do not need to be perfect. They need to continue. In medieval life, oral storytelling was common across all levels of society. For those without access to written words, stories carried knowledge, memory, and distraction, passing time in ways that made hardship more bearable. You feel that effect now? The cold does not disappear, but it recedes slightly from your thoughts as you focus on the rhythm of the voice, the rise and fall of its cadence, the way it shapes the silence into something more manageable. Another voice joins in, softer, adding a detail, correcting a point, or perhaps shifting the story in a new direction. It becomes a shared act, not a performance, but a quiet exchange that keeps minds engaged. You remain at the edge, listening, not intruding. The dog is gone. The warmth it offered replaced now by the subtle comfort of human sound. It is different, less physical, yet it holds its own value. A distraction. A connection. You shift your weight, your body still carrying the memory of the night's strain, the straw, the snow, the layers. All of it remains part of you, shaping how you stand, how you move, how you endure. The voices continue. One speaks of a place where winters are shorter, where the cold does not linger so long. Another counters, suggesting that such places exist only in stories, shaped by hope rather than truth. A quiet disagreement, gentle. It fades quickly, replaced by another thread, another memory, another attempt to fill the space between moments. Historians still argue how widespread such storytelling was among the poorest, as their voices were rarely recorded, yet it seems likely that these exchanges formed an important part of daily life, offering both information and relief. You feel that relief, small but real. A brief escape from the constant focus on cold and hunger. You glance around, noting how others nearby react. Some listen openly, their heads turned toward the speakers. Others remain still, their attention less obvious, yet their posture suggests they hear every word. Even silence participates. You take a slow breath, the air now carrying not just the scent of the street, but the subtle warmth of shared presence, the intangible comfort of voices moving through the cold. It changes the atmosphere, not physically, but mentally. The edge of the night feels less sharp. A figure shifts closer to the group, their movement cautious, as if unsure whether they are welcome. No one turns them away. They settle at the edge, much like you, listening, absorbing, becoming part of the circle without formal acknowledgement. It expands quietly. You consider stepping closer, then decide to remain where you are, close enough to hear, far enough to maintain your space. The balance remains. The story continues, winding through details both familiar and strange, blending truth and imagination in ways that are difficult to separate. It does not matter. Its purpose is not precision. It is endurance. You feel your body relax slightly, your shoulders easing, your breathing steady. The tension of the night, the constant vigilance, softens just a little under the influence of shared sound. You listen, letting the words carry you, not away from the cold but through it. A moment of pause comes as the speaker finishes a thread, their voice trailing off into silence. For a second, the group remains still, the absence of sound noticeable. Then another voice begins. The cycle continues. You remain where you are, part of this quiet exchange, this subtle network of voices that fills the night with something more than survival alone. It is not warmth, not exactly but it helps. And in this long, unyielding night, that is enough. You begin to notice how silence changes once it stretches too long, how it becomes heavier after all the voices fade. It is not empty. It is full of what was just spoken, as if the words linger in the air long after they are gone. The storytelling ends gradually. No clear stopping point, just a soft tapering off. One voice slowing, then another, until only the faint sounds of the street remain. Footsteps in the distance, a door closing somewhere nearby, the quiet return of ordinary night noise. You stand slightly apart now, still listening, but no longer carried by the rhythm of voices. The cold feels sharper again in their absence, as if attention itself had been providing a layer of insulation. Without it, you become more aware of your body, of your surroundings, of the weight of the night returning in full. You shift your stance. The movement is slow. Careful. Nearby, the group begins to disperse, some drift toward doorways, others down side streets, each following paths that seem familiar. Though none are spoken aloud, there is no farewell, only separation. You remain for a moment longer. In medieval towns, the end of communal moments rarely carried ceremony. People simply moved on, returning to their individual struggles. Survival demanded attention, and attention rarely stayed in one place for long. You feel that now, the transition from shared presence back into solitude. A figure passes close to you, their face briefly visible in the dim light. They do not acknowledge you, but their expression suggests thought, perhaps still carrying fragments of the story just shared. Then they are gone. You exhale slowly. The breath forms briefly in the air before dissolving into the cold. You adjust your layers again, pulling them tighter around your torso, The fabric feels slightly more familiar now, as if it has settled into its role more firmly after the long night. The straw, the snow, the cloth, all of it remains with you in memory, even if not physically present anymore. You can still feel their effects, the small adjustments they made possible. You begin walking again, not with urgency, but with direction returning slowly. The street ahead is brighter now, though only slightly. Morning continues to strengthen, washing the deeper shadows away bit by bit. Shapes become clearer, distances more defined. You pass a doorway where someone sleeps or rests, their form barely moving beneath layers of cloth. You do not stop. There is no reason to disturb what still remains in the fragile balance between rest and wakefulness. You continue on. Each step feels steadier than the last. The night has left its imprint on your body, but it no longer dominates your thoughts. Instead, there is a quiet awareness of continuity, of having moved through something difficult and remained intact. For now, you think briefly of the stories you heard, of journeys, of winters that passed differently elsewhere, not as escape but as contrast. Then you let the thought fade. In some medieval accounts, the poorest were described only in passing, their experiences compressed into statistics or moral lessons. Yet what you have just experienced resists such simplification. It is layered, like the night itself. You adjust your pace, following the street as it opens toward a busier area. The sound of activity grows slightly stronger. Carts, voices, movement returning in measured waves. You remain on the edge.
Not fully part of it yet.
But no longer fully in the night either. You take a slow breath. The air feels different now, less oppressive, though still cold. It carries the promise of movement, of change, of the day unfolding into something more structured than the night ever allowed. You walk forward, carrying everything from the hours before, the cold, the silence, the voices, the brief moments of warmth. They remain with you not as separate events, but as parts of a continuous experience that shaped how you endured. You do not leave them behind. You integrate them, and as the street grows brighter, you continue into the day, steady and aware, shaped by everything you have passed through.
Still moving.
Still present. Present. Still here. You begin to understand that morning is not an ending, but a shift in responsibility. The cold does not disappear with the light. It simply becomes something you must navigate while being seen. The street is busier now. Not crowded, but alive in a different way. You walk slowly along the edge of a wider road, where carts pass with steady rhythm and people move with purpose that feels sharper than anything you experienced during the night. Their steps are quicker, their voices more direct. You adjust your posture instinctively, less curled, more open. Visibility changes everything. In medieval towns, daylight brought structure back into the world. Markets opened, work resumed. Movement became regulated not by fear of the cold alone, but by the expectations of society itself. You feel that shift pressing in. A cart passes close, wheels cutting through slush, sending a faint spray of cold water near your feet. The driver barely glances at you. You step aside, not reacting beyond what is necessary. You have learned that much. Survival in daylight requires a different kind of awareness, not the deep listening of night, but the careful reading of attention, of where eyes land, where they do not. You move forward, step by step. Your body still carries the memory of the night, the stiffness in your legs, the faint ache in your hands, the layered weight of cloth that never fully warmed you, but kept you from losing everything. It is still there, but it no longer defines each moment. A faint sound of hammering reaches you from a nearby workshop somewhere. Bread is being baked. Smoke rises in controlled columns from chimneys now fully awake. Life resumes its visible shape. You continue along the street's edge, not lost, not fully directed, but no longer stationary. You pass a small cluster of people gathered near a stall. Their conversation is casual, ordinary, shaped by concerns that feel distant yet familiar. Work, weather, time. You are present among them but separate. A reminder that belonging is not always immediate. Historians still debate how fluid movement between social spaces truly was in medieval towns, how easily someone could shift from the margins towards stability or remain unseen despite constant proximity to daily life. You feel that uncertainty as lived reality, not theory. You pause briefly near a wall where the sun begins to touch stone, a faint warmth beginning to build on its surface. It is not enough to change the cold in your body, but it creates contrast, a reminder that heat exists in other forms. You place a hand against it, just for a moment, then withdraw. You continue walking, your pace steadier now, not hurried, not aimless, a small thread of direction forming shaped by habit, observation, and the quiet accumulation of the night's lessons, where shelter might be found, where movement is safest, where attention is least likely to fall. You carry those understandings forward, the memory of shared voices, the brief fire, the church's pause of warmth, the dog's presence in the cold, the snow that shaped your shelter. They do not feel separate anymore. They feel like parts of a single long experience. A night survived through adaptation rather than endurance alone. You breathe in deeply. The air is still cold, but thinner in its weight, less oppressive than before. It enters and leaves without the same resistance, as if the world itself has loosened slightly. Ahead, the street opens further. Movement increases. Possibility widens. You do not know exactly where you will end the day, or where the next night will take you, but that uncertainty is no longer overwhelming. It is familiar. You adjust your layers one final time, securing what remains of your protection, feeling the worn fabric settle against your skin. Then you walk forward again, not as someone escaping the night, but as someone continuing beyond it. Still cold, still moving, still enduring. Sweet dreams.